So as you have heard, recording in progress. Welcome everyone again to this session about co-leadership. This session is hosted by Oxford HR, an executive search firm that works globally to find the suitable people for the for-purpose organizations, regardless NGOs or INGOs or even private sector. But the for-purpose is basically the main way. My name is Subhi Khatib. Sobi is fine enough. So is okay as well. If you have issues with pronouncing my name, I have no, let's say, issues with that. Next to me, there's also my colleague, Hannah Postma. She's also from Oxford HR, and she would be moderating the chat in case any of you would have questions or any of you have any things that you would like to say without unmuting yourself, for example. So those are, I would say, kind of like the basic rules. I cannot really talk much about privacy because this would be online, recorded, and watched everywhere. And from here, I will just go to the structure, and then we will go into the content of the session. So what we will have at the beginning is introducing our guests. After that, I will give each of them 5 minutes to talk about their own experience regarding co-leadership. Following that, we will have 10 minutes of a Q&A. I will start with one question maybe or two, and then I will give the space for anyone who would like to ask questions. Of course, if while they're saying things, you have a question, just write it in the chat. After those 10 minutes of Q&A, if there are like many questions, maybe we can extend the Q&A a little bit longer. If not, what we will do next will be going to breakout rooms for 3 to 4 people each group, where you can discuss more about the topic, opportunities, challenges for your organization, questions that you might think of in a small setting of 3 to 4 people. And that will be also for about 10 minutes. Then we will go back to the forum and discuss together what have been discussed in the breakout rooms. So this would be the structure of our program for the coming 1 hour. And I hope you will get the best out of it. Without further ado, I would like to introduce my guests, Marianne and Frederick. I would like to thank them a lot for joining this session and being here to talk about their own experiences. So I will just give them the stage to start and to introduce themselves and dive also into what they would like to say to us. Marianne, would you like to start? You're muted, by the way. Yeah. Please.
I'm sorry. I can start briefly, and then maybe I'll hand to Fred just to say a bit about himself, and then we can say a bit more. So yeah, I'm Marianne Clements. I'm one half of the co-leadership team at AD International. We're a UK registered international NGO working in different countries in both Africa and Asia on disability rights. We've been around for about 35 years, always supporting the liberation of disabled people through supporting the organisations that they run and lead, but doing it in different ways as the sector's evolved over many years. And recently we've implemented this co-leadership model where Frederick and I are working together to lead the organisation through a time of change and rethinking how we achieve our broader vision in these times, which are very different from the 1980s when we were established. I'm based in London in the UK, and I work from home with our teams both here in the UK and in the different countries where we work. And maybe it's good, Frederick, if you just do that short intro, and then we can share a bit about our practice.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me and having us as well. My name is Frederick Oko. I'm the half of co-leadership as well, joining from Nairobi. I work from home as well, and I've worked in the disability rights movement for the last 15 plus years, leading organization of persons with disability at a national level, then transitioned to philanthropy, worked with the disability development, Light for the World, and then went to Open Society, Foundation, leading the disability rights work, and here I am working with AD International as a co-leader. So really my first time, but yeah, so that's why I'm here to share my experiences, how far it's going, and what are my views around that. So yeah, in a bit.
I think I've got like a few things to start us off that I would share. And like, you know, one thing that's interesting about co-leadership is you don't always know what the other half's going to say next. So I'll say a few things and then, you know, Fred will say a few things. And it means, you know, obviously we do some prep for things, but also there's an element of, you know, having to trust, of course, like trust is like the number one. You've got to trust the other person, you know, that's like a key thing. And so actually for me, like my first point is really that trust and the relationship between you as co-leads is so important. And it's something that it's quite hard to, I think, necessarily predict in advance. So I've had organizations also contact me with advice about, you know, how do we move to co-leadership? How do we recruit someone? And there's this element that's about the sort of relationship between you, like how you get on, which, you know, you can't completely write in a job description. So like that piece about trust and relationship between you is, for me, is like a key thing that you have to work on basically in co-leadership, and you have to be present to and be thinking about. And that's obviously, it's a very different thing to be focused on than you're the leader. And obviously I know, you know, I interact with a lot of other CEOs in the INGO sector in the UK through networks, you know, Bond, which is our UK INGO network, and others who are, you know, a single person. And obviously then the pressure is very much on you as an individual. And something that obviously co-leadership does on a personal level is you get someone to talk about those difficult things with, which is brilliant, but you've also got to get on with that person. So I think that thing about how it shifts what your role is and the relationship is really key. And then I think at AD, we're also looking more broadly at how we can kind of change our style of working and our culture, right? So we're looking at focusing on decision making for our work and for the funding that we give to disability movements to be made by disabled people themselves and led by them. So rather than our decisions feeling, as at times they have in the past, quite top down, like they're coming from funders, like they're coming from perhaps our other INGO partners. And whilst we might be consulting disabled people, whilst we might have those mechanisms for kind of basic participation in planning and design and doing the work in place, the leadership and decision making isn't really coming from those people that we work with. So we're looking at this change where we really focus on making sure that decision making is with the people that we work with, and that we're specifically telling our funders and those that we support that actually that's what we want to do, and we're not going to prioritize what you want, we're going to prioritize what the people that we exist to support want. And co-leadership is one small element of that, but it's that there's something in co-leadership that's around decision making not being that hierarchy of, you know, the CEO's at the top of the organization, you just decide on your own, you know, and that comes down from funders. And there's this kind of, you know, hierarchy that's very focused actually on chief exec in a lot of INGOs, where in fact above there's a board of many, but the CEO is this pinch point where somehow there's this very heavy focus on that person. And I think co-leadership is, for us, one small part of a general change we want to make about who decides and how we decide, but just bringing in that shared decision making indicates to everyone else in the organization that we don't want to focus on a single leader hierarchy anymore. Hand to Fred.
Just like one minute before we pass it to Frederick. Yeah.
Go.
Just so last thoughts.
One last thought. Which one is most important to come next? Well, I think one thing that I also wanted to add was that although this is relative, so that we've brought this in this year at International, but I've been lucky enough to learn from leaders in the feminist funding space. So both Frida, the Young Feminist Fund, and also Urgent Action Fund, Asia and Pacific, both of whom have had a co-leadership model for quite a long time. And so I want to honour that lineage, because actually we're not starting from nowhere, and learning from them some of this about trust and relationship and sharing power you know, that practice has been around in feminist movements and feminist funding spaces for quite a while, and that learning is key, right? And so whilst in the sort of more mainstream INGO sector this feels quite new, you know, as Bart was saying, it feels like, oh, this is it, there is learning, and there are people that have been doing this and doing it for the right reasons, as in to want to do things differently and learning about relationship and trust and sharing power. So with that, I'll hand to Frederick.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. And so just really to buttress the fact that in co-leadership, relationship is more important in terms of how you relate with the second half of the leadership. Very much determines how you interact with the whole staffing and how the decisions are felt around the organization, whether it's concurrence or whether there's some sort of a divergence. It doesn't mean that we cannot have divergent views. We just say, I think on this one, I take a different view from, say, Marianne, and these are the reasons. And it might be that it's not very much removed in terms of decision making, but at least you're bringing in a different perspective. And because both of you trust one another that you'll do the right thing, so overall you will say, yeah, on this one, say, where is the middle point in terms of if we need to move forward, and which then encourages some sort of people trusting the process, that you will not be a yes kind of team. And then so also from the staffing, people are kind of get the confidence to either challenge you, which means that you get more views around the room than if you are just one leader and you've said something, so everyone follows that. But if you are two and you're kind of having some sort of weighed kind of opinion, so others then come in, and then that enriches the kind of decision you make as a colleague, and which I found that to be very, very, very important. But also, at some point, people might forget that you are actually doing a co-lead, but it's not that you are two lead separate roles. It's one role. So there comes the cracks whereby there can be some sort of misunderstanding that either because I know Marianne, everything for decision making I'll go to Marianne and then leave out Fred, or because I have a good working relationship with Fred, then I'll go to Fred and keep out Marianne. So the way you then manage that is that all of you then agree how then on the background do you brief one another around things that are happening within the organization so that no one falls behind in terms of decision making. So for example, I work 3 days, Monday to Wednesday. Marianne works from Wednesday to Friday. So we have a kind of a transition period kind of day, which is a Wednesday. So we have to ensure that we are briefing one another, or if there's a key decision that I can't make on my own, or I think I need it to be enriched so that we are making the right decision for the organization, it's just a matter of reaching out to Marianne, even if she's not working, via text message that, what do you think about this? Without necessarily having to push her to go and read a whole paragraph I've written on email, that she can read later to have a full understanding. But the core is, will she back up the decision I'm making now? Because what then we've discussed with the team is, for these kind of decisions, you don't need to seek a decision from the two of us at a go. So long as I say yes, you know it is a yes, because we are the kind of, it is a CEO role, only that we are sharing the role. So you don't need to say again, have a concurrence as a staff from Marianne or from Fred when Fred is not working. So like today, if Marianne made any decision, it is her responsibility to inform me that, by the way, Fred, when you are not working, this is the kind of decision I've made. So if anyone comes up to you, you'll know already that this is what already we made. And then now we have also kind of a shared documentation within our system that it is possible for us to track who has made what decision and how does it affect the kind of plans that we have. And that really then ensures that people don't need to come to us twice looking for the same decision. If they already made a decision with me on Monday, it means that's what goes over. So Marianne doesn't need again to try looking for it. It's me who then has the responsibility to brief her or show her where that is deposited in terms of our documentation within the system. And because people can forget along the way, so we've said all of us kind of share some sort of roles.
To interrupt you, Fred, just like maybe you want to wrap up like this last thought so we can go into questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've come up with a kind of a matrix for what can you go to Marianne and what can you go to Frederick, like kind of line managing. So all of our senior leadership team have someone they can go to in terms of their line management. But for decision, any of them can go to anyone. But for their sake of, if they want to maybe confide or something like that, then they will know my person is Frederick or my person is Marianne. And that helps in terms of even their own reviews. But for the decision making, they go to anyone, so long as we are able to list. And we've listed all types of decisions, how we communicate, and then in a sort of a document that details and which kind of email, if you wanted to reach all of us with the same communication, how then you reach to us internally, and we'll know how we subdivide the role or how we come back to you. So it's our business to discuss behind the scene before we respond to you, not having two emails on the same question that was thrown around everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. And thank you, Mariana, as well, of course. I see already like we have 3 questions lining up, which is great. I will start with 2 questions, and then I will also give you to answer the questions in the chat. By the way, feel free, both of you, Frederick or Marianne, to jump in and answer whatever question you feel it's the one, or complement each other. I guess you do this on a daily basis. My very first question is actually about trust, because you both mentioned trust and the development of this co-leadership relationship. But how does this trust start? Because I guess, when you start working together, you don't really know each other, you don't really know the styles of each other. How do you build up this trust and all those also matrices and documentation that you spoke about? Like, did it come also through like many discussions, or did it come natural? How? So I'm talking about like the 2 levels of the practical, but also of like this emotional level of saying, yes, I can feel I'm there with the person.
Maybe I can start and Fred come in. So I think we said to you in the prep, actually, we were lucky because we knew each other a bit before. So we hadn't worked together in this way, but when Fred was leading the organization that he spoke about, I worked in an INGO and we partnered with them. So we knew each other. And that helps, I think, with the building of trust. And it's not unique to us. So I know a number of other co-leadership teams that have worked well, where the people knew each other in another capacity. So they, and we did go through like a recruitment process for that to happen. But it helps, right? If you know something about each other. And I think if you're moving into co-leadership where the people don't know each other at all, there's got to be a period of building that's built in a way that we could probably have speeded up, right? So I think that relationship building is easier if you have some knowledge of each other in your work. But it's obviously not a prerequisite, it just helps. In terms of the things that we've put in place internally, like I said before, we've learned from other people. So one thing around that is deciding what we would split and what we would share, and being clear about that with our team. So as Fred's already described, but I think there's still work in progress, and perhaps this is always ever evolving to some extent, because organizations need different things at different moments. And so like any CEO, even if it was one individual, you focus on different things at different times, and different things rise up to be more important. And so I think there's always got to be an element also of flexibility around some of that. Yeah, let me hand to you, Fred. Is there anything else that occurs to you on that?
Yeah, and so the division of tasks is not more about the whole thing, like the organization, so you'll handle this, you handle this. No, we've agreed based on the objectives. So as the CEOs, these are the objectives that the board has given us that we need to work on for this year. And so discussing with Marianne, we will come to understanding that what are your strong areas. You can do the others, yes, but there's areas you feel these are strong for you. So it's kind of a conversation that you have, and you say, no, I like, for me, I just told Marianne, finance is not my thing. Yes, if push, then I can work on finance, but I think you are more capable doing the finance thing or something like handling the dockets, not really like doing the doing. And I'll be more capable in terms of, say, the program, maybe say the visioning or something like that. So any objectives, so within the objective, so any stuff that comes around that objective, so it means then you also line manage them, because this is where you feel you're excited in terms of the whole total sum of what you need to do. And then you then cross share. So there's a time where we have joint meetings, or there's times where we have just separate meetings based on the objectives, but then we agree. These are very key on the points in terms of objective for the organization that the board wants us to deliver in the shortest time. So we are going to co-share those particular objectives. So for now, it is transformation for AD. So it means we don't need to have separate meetings on these ones. So any staff working around those issues will co-line manage them, but also we'll kind of have joint meetings with them so that no one needs to have separate discussion out, and then it's easier to make decision fast and quick so that it's precise, so that we can move forward. So really that's how so far we've managed that angle. There's a question around challenges in terms of what this presents. Of course, traditionally as organizations, you'll all understand that people know that the CEO is the most senior person in the organization. They are the decision maker. They need to tell us A, B, C, D. While as we think, because there's a bit of small radicalness within ourselves, and that's from our separate lives, that we know that decision making is not top down. We are supposed to co-share that. People need to contribute around that. So allowing people to do that feels like sometimes maybe we are not playing our roles very actively. Yet we really just want to have the dynamism within the organization and the varied kind of ideas melting up together, so that we have, when we make a decision, is the most kind of inclusive idea that we have going forward. So then that means that we will take time before making a decision that we knew ourselves we could make it this way, but wanting to go along with every staff then can take just a bit of time to make that particular decision. And some point, people will still want to think that I have to talk to both Marianne and Fred to go forward with a particular decision. While even if we've already told them that either of us is fine, go ahead. So maybe in either of the stuff that we co-manage. So it means that even though we've said openly, we've had a document, that still is something that we have to constantly remind people that it's fine. All of us are kind of one role. So you really don't need to go back to either of us when you already talked to one person. So that then you have to reassure staff that if you made the decision with Fred, it still be fine with Marianne. So just go on, and we'll look at the things as we go by. But also then and this one has come maybe from not so internally, but from outside. So people will think, Fred from Africa, Marianne, UK. So Fred is just maybe a cosmetic hire that has been made for this particular organization to look nice or something like that. I mean, it's possible for someone to say that because they don't know the mechanism under which this decision was made within the organization. So it means that then we have again to spend time explaining to them that I'm not a diversity hire, for example. I was hired because I was equal to this particular task, and it's because the organization has reached a particular point that they want things to be done this particular way, and it's the board's decision really. It's not even that the staff was said, no, it's Fred who's coming in or something like that. So really those are kind of a few challenges that you have to overcome and really communicate proactively that, yeah, this is the issue, and this is how we are kind of confronting it.
Thank you, Fred. Especially also for the last point, like some of those like unspoken assumptions that you're just like bringing up. Thank you for that. Maraika, I see your question about the division of tasks. Do you think you got an answer, or you would like to? Yes, perfect. The next question was from Hilda. If one co-leader is not happy with the decision made by the other, how do you process this? And also, is that discussion taking place behind closed doors? Are you always like having it a united front? Any of you would like to pick this up?
Well, it's such an interesting question. People always ask this as if as if we must be disagreeing all the time. And so I'm going to say two things about it. One, we haven't had a major disagreement, so I can't tell you exactly. People will say, well, what will you do? What will you do? And I say, well, if we have a disagreement that we can't resolve between ourselves, we would obviously have to go to our board. We've never had to do that at this point. So I'm not talking from experience of that. But I think it is true that in going into co-leadership, you have to be willing not to be the one that's right all the time, not to be the one that decides all the time, and for the other person to have a different view from you and to not make that a big deal. Now, obviously, if Fred decides something that I thought was dangerous for the organization, that would be more of an issue. But sometimes it is, you know, there are lots of things between completely agreeing and dangerous for the organization where I might go, well, maybe I wouldn't have done that, but that's fine. You know, that's what part of what co-leadership is. A bit like if someone you line manage, you know, feels slightly different from you, and you know, you maybe try and encourage them in one way, but they make a difference. That you might not always veto them. It's a bit, you know, it's like that, but on an equal level. So there's that, and then I think it's important for people who are in co-leadership roles like us to be able to process some of their own kind of, you know, have ways to process some of their own kind of stuff that might get in the way of that, right? So, you know, what am I going to do if I think that the decision is wrong? Well, maybe I'm going to take a bit of time first and think, you know, is this really important? Do I need to make a big, you know, fuss about this before I start making it into a conflict? Does it all happen behind closed doors? Good question. I think, as Fred's already suggested, we're trying to bring more decision making, not just between the two of us, but between our whole senior leadership team together, and for that to be shared more with their teams also. So we're trying to do more debate and discussion live. And at the same time, I think it is important for us to have a united front at the kind of, you know, red line type, you know, this is what we want, you know, this is an absolute. There are some things where it's really important that we do have a shared line, otherwise things could get messy quite quickly. So I think it's a balance of those things that we're trying to create. Fred, please add or disagree.
Yeah, and then the issue more is if these are very kind of maybe a tricky situation, we'll always try to find consensus before addressing it. So, for example, if there was someone we needed to talk to about maybe changing or doing something in a better way, we'll first agree what are the key points amongst ourselves so that we don't appear disjointed, because it's just about what is your view about the individual, what is my view, and what could be the most possible way that we can help the person. That we have to do before kind of a meeting, so that then it's clear that it's towards we are aiming towards resolving something, not really just discussing it. So and we look at the both of the extremes amongst ourselves. What if they said this? And so you see, it gives us an opportunity to debate even among ourselves, so that then we have the best the possible chances to resolve a particular issue with any of our kind of staffing. And of course, communication is key between us, because we actually have it that there's time, we have a longer time to brief ourselves on the major ongoings within the organization. So we'll ask, initially, we didn't have say an assistant to help us with our calendar. And we just flag that off, that this is really important, that we need to have someone who manages that, so that we have even time to talk to ourselves, because everyone is kind of taking up our time, that we don't find time to talk to amongst ourselves on key issues, or even just revisit some of the decisions we've made and see where everything is. So now we say maybe after 2 weeks or something, we are going to have a longer maybe meeting, maybe 2 hours or 2 hours and a half, just to reconcile and see, redraw what are the priorities and things like that. But then when that is not possible, maybe just a 30 minutes catch up when someone is coming in during their for their days, and then it's easier so that they have clear things that then they're working. So really communication is key. That how has it gone, where are we, and how should we manage the last bit that is left within the week.
Thank you, Frederick. Christine, do you think your question was also answered? Because I guess Frederick spoke about the challenges earlier. Yes, perfect. Rachel, it's funny, like you basically asked the question, I had it like word to word in my mind to ask. And I think it's also important, and you both, Frederick and Marianne, touched a little bit upon communication, but I would like to get a little bit like to the critical feedback. Like, how do you manage those dynamics yourselves? Like, Marianne, you touched a little bit upon it before.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want to speak more about it, or you want to pass to the next question.
I mean, I think, you know, I don't want to overemphasize this, but like any relationship, it's a work in progress, right? So I think we're learning all the time how to make decisions together, how to, there's challenges with that. And like Fred's just highlighted lots of stuff around time. And I think we underestimated at the beginning how much time we would need to engage with each other. And part of that is because rather than kind of weighing in and making decisions and then pulling it back, and we're trying to have those discussions up front. We're trying to say, what do you really think about this? Because I think this, but I'm not sure. Or even, what do you think about this? Because I'm just not sure, so that we are building, that relationship all the time. And so I think that, that's something that any organization going into a co-leadership situation needs to think about, right? I do think in our experience, the benefits massively outweigh that extra time, because we're moving through quite a big change in our organization. Having two people's thoughts on that, I think, is hugely valuable. I think it would still be valuable if we weren't moving through change, but what organization isn't, right? Especially right now in our sector. I think having someone else's perspective on the big questions is like super, super valuable. And it's very different from having your board's perspective, who come in and come out, as someone who's in it, but they're at your level in it, is really valuable. And so I think, we've so far found ways to work things out and to share honest feedback with each other. I'm sure we can get better at it though. So I don't want to present ourselves as like this, supermodel of it. But yeah, like I think it's a work in progress. And I'm just gonna say one thing about the next question, and then kind of hand to Fred, and feel free to take a few questions, Fred, when I do that. Because I think that question around how does this impact the rest of the organization is also a bit of a work in progress. So like, we're really conscious that co-leadership in and of itself on its own doesn't mean the rest of the organization isn't hierarchical, doesn't mean other people behave differently, that how you do it matters. It's not just doing it. Okay, we've got co-leaders, all right, our organization is more feminist or more, no, that it's not, it doesn't just happen. You have to work at it, and we're still working at that. So we're trying to bring more people into decision making. We're trying to ensure that more of our decision making is actually not even within ad, but from the people that we work with. But it's a work in progress. We don't have all of that right. And that sometimes we are still making relatively top-down decisions about things that just have to be sorted out. So, I don't want to paint us as a model of perfection, but hopefully more of like a kind of study and practice. Fred.
Yeah, I would just say the reason why perhaps we haven't had a bit of bigger challenges so far is because we know where we're coming from, and then there's kind of we have some sort of an aligned philosophy around the things we're working on and where we see that we are going. So they kind of in terms of visioning. So that allows us because sometimes when you're brought together by a particular vision and you are so committed to it and you know this thing needs to happen either way. So that's how that pulls you together in terms of achieving that. But it doesn't mean that if I had something like really stressful that I needed to give Marianne feedback that I wouldn't do. No, I'll just tell, can we have a talk about this? And then like, yeah, hear me out on A, B, C, D, and then just think more about how then do we cross that. It's because we've worked together in the past and we've even shared some sort of more critical views about things. So overally, from a development perspective and how development is led or something like that. So we have some sort of a kind of a shared history in terms of how we perceive things. So it wouldn't, because I know she wouldn't take offense if I told her something on the spot, because she knows I speak straight in terms of into things, and I have a kind of a critical mind around how I view things, and I just openly say that. So that wouldn't change because now we are working together. Same to her. So she will. That's kind of that environment that then allows us to just do anything. And if it comes to that we need to talk to one another about some sort of difficulties, that will still happen because of that particular history. I think in terms of there was a question about how we build trust and communication and what can distinguish our leadership. I think one thing that and all of you will know that then what makes this interesting is because it is north south, and so you will have a bit of skepticism about around people thinking that no, that is cosmetic, just the way I did say. And even people from our own movement, something like, oh no, Fred, so are you the deputy CEO? Even if their reading is co-CEO, but they were like, oh no, so you are, and people will go up to the level of asking you, so you guys have different pay. So for Africa and say Europe kind of thing. So it is how that you communicate about that then helps to kind of distinguish what is it that is happening vis-a-vis what is meant to happen in terms of that relationship. But also just seeing Marianne also giving me some pointers in terms of, I think we need to do it this way so that everyone knows that this is a core lead and it's not something like there's a north and then there's south. So it means south is less in terms of premium, in terms of the leadership and the value that they bring to kind of, so and it's something sometimes in the background, we can see some sort of, if you see even an insinuation, it is something that we just talk, like you can chat, like informal chat, by the way, how did you see, did you think there's something of this nature that is possibly trying to present itself, but how then can we counter that? So we actually just openly discuss, and then that has really been helpful. So it means that there's a way you counter it without necessarily showing that you're actually countering something. It's just the usual work, but you know that there's something that was either overtly somebody tried to show, and then you just really come up against that in a more very respectful manner.
Thank you, Frederick. I hope you got your answers, Jonah and Manon. And then I see what you wrote, Rachel. I would advise everyone to read it, but I will not take it because there's no question for our guests. Any other questions before we go to breakout rooms? No, I don't see any questions. It's a very intriguing conversation. I'm like, wow, it's only 15 minutes left. So I will we will do the breakout rooms, by the way, because there is, I would say, in a small setting, it would be easier also to express your thoughts and to be able to share what you think. So we'll do this for 10 minutes. In case you are in a silent breakout rooms with basically cameras off and voices off, leave the room and I will assign you to another one. Just to make sure that you're actually interacting with people and not just sitting there on your own. So I will just create the rooms to be 3 to 4 people max. And so we will have 6 rooms. And Marianne and Frederick, feel free to leave out the room so you don't become kind of like the focus in the spotlight, so people can also speak themselves. So I'm doing it now. And this will be for 10 minutes, as I said, and I will see you all in 10 minutes. Yeah, yes, it's a good question. I would say it's just to discuss what's your take on co-leadership, opportunities, challenges, some thoughts that you would like to share based on what you have heard so far, or maybe what you have read or heard in some other places. Enjoy and see you in 10 minutes.
I wonder if you pause the recording.
Ah, yes.
Hello.
People will be back. Because in 8 seconds, everyone should be here. Welcome back, everyone. I guess we need to apologize for like the abrupt cutting of conversations, the way breakout rooms end. You're like in the middle of a sentence. No. So I hope some of you got to know a little bit each other as well, and you have shared some thoughts and some things. Due to time, we cannot really go into sharing what you have discussed or other questions. I would just like to use the last 2 minutes to thank all the participants who joined us for this short session. And to thank, of course, our guests, Frederick and Marianne, for joining us and for sharing their experiences and for being here, very open and very transparent about almost like everything in their progress. Unfortunately, Christine, there would not be a follow-up on this session. Like this is one-off session that Oxford HR with AD International have coordinated as part of Partos Festival. This session will be published, like the recording will be published and shared in a week time or so, as Hilde have told me. So before the actual festival will be shared. I will be in the festival, by the way, next week, so maybe I will see you there, who knows. I will just say thank you, everyone. Marianne and Frederick, thanks a lot again for being here with us. And I wish you all a great weekend ahead and a lovely Friday.
Yeah, feel free, if anyone wants to reach out to us, do feel free to look for us via, we're on LinkedIn and all that stuff. So if you have questions, that do feel free. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.